The podcast will explain the relationship between our vision and our emotions. The goals of the podcast include the definition of the emotions and how our vision is connected to our emotions, and an assignment to solidify, make very practical, the lessons learned in the podcast. We're going to discuss how we have our emotions, what structures in the brain are involved in the emotions, and what connections they have to our vision. We certainly know that our emotions affect us, both psychologically and physically as well. There's also the entity of emotional intelligence, which is only mentioned in this podcast, and there will be in the future a podcast of that all on its own. The figure on this slide shows the components of the limbic system, and as will be noted, the limbic system is comprised of the hypothalamus, the amygdala, the thalamus, and the basal ganglia. I have invented a number of instruments that measure vision, but also access the limbic system, and this will be explained in the next several slides. As noted on a previous slide, the hypothalamus is one of the components of the limbic system, and from the connection of the hypothalamus to the focusing muscle of the eye, known as the ciliary muscle, we can access the limbic system via the hypothalamus by training the ciliary muscle. There's a feedback loop between the ciliary muscle and the hypothalamus. Fibers from the hypothalamus go to a nerve center in the neck that sends nervous impulses to the focusing muscle. The retina of the eye then sends messages back to the hypothalamus, so we have a feedback loop. The hypothalamus sends messages to the ciliary muscle, and the retina of the eye sends messages back to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus controls many bodily functions. What is most important to learn from this slide is that when one function in the hypothalamus is impaired, one or more of the other functions will be impaired as well. That's the bad news. The good news is, if we can restore or improve the function of one of these, then one or more of the other functions will also improve. Accordingly, when we improve someone's vision by training the focusing muscle, we can stimulate one or more of the functions shown on the chart. The hypothalamus is located graphically in the middle of the skull as part of the midbrain to afford maximum protection from outside trauma. The hypothalamus has many components which help it control the many functions of the body. One of the functions that we noticed on the hypothalamus function chart is the brain waves. The brain waves are known as the electroencephalogram, or the acronym is EEG. The EEG has 4 spontaneous waves as shown in the chart. Each of the waves have a Greek name. The slowest is the delta wave, which we associate with sleep. The next fastest wave is the theta wave, and these are the waves that keep us from falling asleep at night and wake us up in the morning. The next fastest waves are the alpha waves, sometimes known as being in a Zen meditative state or being in the zone. Alpha can be described briefly as attention without tension, or in contemporary language, situational awareness. The next wave is the beta wave, which we can describe as when we're rushing around and there seems to be less than 60 minutes in 1 hour. The slide shows a representation of the brain waves. The raw EEG is the input into the computer, and then the computer program transforms transforms the raw wave into the theta waves and the alpha waves. The theta waves are in red and the alpha waves are in blue, and each hemisphere, right and left, have their own brain waves. The goal of the training is to increase the alpha brain waves, which will then stimulate various functions of the body. The graph on top is the baseline showing the theta waves in red and the alpha waves in blue for both the right and left hemispheres. The top graph is the baseline and the bottom is during the actual training. As can be noted by looking at the waves of the left brain during training, the alpha brain goes off the scale as compared to baseline. This, in effect, is what stimulates the hypothalamus. The diagram shows the multitude nervous system connections related to the emotions and vision, with emphasis on the connections to the visual cortex and the structures of the limbic system. But not only are there these nervous system connections, but there's many chemical connections as well. As an assignment, assess your vision when happy or relaxed compared to when you're tired or stressed. If you have any questions or would like more information, here is the contact information, and I'll be happy to reply to your request.